So how did it all start? Well, it pretty much started from desperation. I was doing what I was told to do, study hard, get good grades, get a good job. And I did that for a really long time. Those were the typical advice I got from my parents, being from a very, very conservative family, save more money, spend less money, get a good job. And I did all that for a long time, but because I didn't do well in university, I got a 42% average. I nearly flunked out, and I couldn't get a job at that time. All these companies that were once headhunting me now didn't want to offer me a job, and I was unemployed for about 3.5 months. And finally, when I got a job, they offered me about $350 back in Malaysia. And even in Malaysia, with that amount, it's very, very hard to survive. But the funny thing is this, I actually worked on this job for nearly 2 years because I was so conditioned to believe that if I don't do well in school, if I don't get good grades, this is the price that I have to pay for the rest of my life. So I wanted to redeem myself. But strangely enough, after a year working on this job, it really just came to me while I was having a shower. I was just standing there 45 minutes in, water's coming down, and I'm just thinking to myself, where did it all go wrong? How did I manage to screw up this badly in life? I was a scholar, I was a straight A student, and just because of one mistake, I realized that it would take me about 26 years just to pay back the debt, the loan that I have with the government because they sponsored my scholarship when I was studying in UK. And that's when I realized I needed to do something different. And that was when I went online, I went on Google and I typed in how to make money online. And that was really the start of my journey. And that's how I discovered the internet. So response from friends and family. I'll start my family first. You see, you got to understand that my parents grew up in a very, very traditional, conservative upbringing. Especially my dad. My dad's a farmer. He worked on 2 jobs for 13 years in his life. From 9 to 5, he worked with the government, and from 6 to about midnight, he would work on the farm. And on weekends, there were no weekends. My dad would work on the farm as a farmer, and he would do that day in, day out for 13 years. So with that in mind, the only way my dad knows how when it comes to creating wealth is through blood, sweat, and tears. Any other way is not real, right? Especially when it comes to internet. So my parents were never really supportive of me, even though they loved me, because to them, they could never grasp what the internet is. It's only until a couple of years ago when my parents actually got registered for an email. So just think about that, right? So my parents always told me, you know what, you have a really good job, a really stable job. Why would you want to risk something that's not real? So even though my parents loved me, they never really supported me at the start because they could never just wrap their minds around running something that's not tangible. But the difference is when I started seeing the results and I could show them, one big life-changing moment was when we came to a point in time whereby my parents and I, we couldn't really talk about the internet anymore because it would always end up in an argument. And that was a very big problem because every time on the dinner table, I'm very excited about my online business. I want to share with them, but it became like a topic we cannot talk about. So one day, I knew that I had to really sit down with my dad and just show him. And at that time, because it was about a year in after that and we never really talked about it, I sat down and I printed out my bank statements and I showed Dad, take a look at this. This is the amount I've earned in the last couple of months. And when he looked at the bank statements, he actually has never seen such an amount in his whole life. And I said, Dad, I love you. And I don't say this out of disrespect, but what I've earned in the last couple of months is more than what you've saved up in the last 20 years. So maybe the internet is not real. Maybe this thing is a fad, like you say. Maybe it will burst and this thing might not work out. But as a son, maybe you can just support me and allow me to do this on my own for just 1 year. That's all I'm asking. Give me 1 year, support me for 1 year, right? And if this does not work out, I'll promise you I'll go back to my 9 to 5 job. And he agreed. And that was when that turnaround happened and they started supporting me. And it's really funny because when he saw that amount, he said, whoa, do more of what you're doing right now. I still make fun of him for that even till today. So that's how, what my family were saying when I first started out. My friends, I think they were old, to them, it's kind of the same thing. they never really understood what the internet is. What they would know is that when they're going out to clubs and pubs and having a good time at the cinemas, normally I would say, you know what, I want to try doing this on my own. So when it comes to the path of being an entrepreneur, I think that's where sacrifices would need to take place. And during that 1 to 2 years, I actually pretty much did not have a social life. While my friends were out having a good time. And this is what people don't see. On the surface, people see, good times, traveling around the world. But what people don't see is the hard work that was put in at the foundational levels. So what made me stick with this business, right? Because most people try it out and a lot of people fail. So what was different in my case? A couple of things. I think in a way I was lucky because I had a lot of friends when I look around me and I could see all these different success stories. So that gave me the motivation and the drive to push further even though I was not seeing any results. Because I would look around me and I would see, hey, all these people are making big money online. Why not me? What are they doing differently that I am not doing? So that gave me the will to push through. And even it took me about 9 months to make my first sale. And my first sale was only $7. And that moment, it was 6:30 in the morning. I was getting ready to go for work. It was, one of the first things I'll do is I'll check my email. And it was this email from PayPal. And it says, notification of payment received. And that moment was magical for me because when I saw that email, I knew then that all I need to do is to rinse and repeat the same thing that I did again and again and again and again. And that's exactly what I did. That moment led me to believe that this thing works. Even though it was not a life-changing amount, it was a life-changing scenario. And that is what made me push through. So a common question that I get all the time is, Peng Joon, when it comes to the online world, there's so many different ways to make money online, right? What is the single best way? And here's the problem. There's no direct answer to that. The reason for it is because of this. If someone were to go online and they type in how to make money online, there's about 2 billion search results. And they're all saying different things. Some says eBay, affiliate marketing, drop shipping, ClickBank, trade stocks, Forex, and all these different ways to make money online. Now, the problem is this. For each of these different ways to make money online, there's someone who's obviously making millions of dollars on Forex, somebody who's making millions of dollars in drop shipping, millions of dollars running an eBay business. But at the same time, there's someone else who says, you know what, I've tried it, it does not work, right? So at the end of the day, it's not about choosing the right vehicle. That is just a fraction of the entire picture. Much more important is the system that actually drives the vehicle that will make the difference. So at the end of the day, it's not about which vehicle will work better than another. It's about what is the system that the person's using to run that vehicle, and that will make all the difference. Right, okay, so the question is the difference between product versus marketing. Now here's the thing about product. Most people get too hung up on the product. And the problem is this, it's very possible to have the best product in the world, the most life-changing product in the world, and still not make any money. So in other words, rather than just focusing on a product, which is important, but that is not a skill that actually brings in the revenue. And there's 5 different things that they want to focus on that's actually more important than the product itself. The first thing is traffic, getting people to come to your website, right? Because that's something that will generate revenue. Number 2 would be conversions. In other words, out of 100 people that comes to a website, how many people end up buying and how much they end up spending. That's another skill set they need to learn. And the third one would be the marketing. Number 4 would be the branding. And number 5 would be the sales funnel, the system that connects it all together. What happens when a person comes to a website? Is the lead being captured? How are they following up the lead? Are they monetizing from the lead? And all those things. And that is the sales funnel. So while the product is important, the more important thing would be the 5 elements that I just mentioned. The marketing aspect of it, the traffic, the conversions, because that are the key elements that will make the difference. So what are the skills needed to run a successful online business? Now, let me talk about what the myths are first. The biggest myths people have when it comes to running a successful online business is they tend to think that they either need to be a programmer, a designer, a coder, or someone who's just good with computers, or a writer, or anything like that. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, the people that gets paid in this industry and that gets paid really well is not the programmer, the designer, the coder, or even the expert. It's always the marketer who always gets the money. And the good news is the marketing is a learnable, trainable skill. So because everything else can be outsourced, right? The writer, the programmer, the designer, that can be outsourced. The main skill a person should acquire is how do you run the marketing of it. Because if you can get the traffic in, the conversions, the branding right, all the other things can be outsourced. And those are the main skills a person wants to develop in order to run a successful online business. Being here in South Africa before, I noticed that the market here is very hungry. People are eager to learn. And unemployment rates being very high means that people are desperate for jobs. It means that it's easier to hire people because everybody's desperate for a job. But what that also means is that it's probably the best time to set up their own business and be their own boss. Because when it comes to running an online business, the barriers to entry is extremely low. It costs less than $100 to register for a website name and hosting as well. And those are pretty much the only two elements needed to start an online business. And there's no other business models in the world that's got such a low barrier to entry. Not franchising, not a brick and mortar business. And that's why I believe in the online business. So that being said, what does it mean for South Africans? I think that when it comes to an online business, it's not just online, but it's about linking everything together, online and offline, because it works hand in hand. And there's no better time for someone in South Africa to start an online business. So a question that I always get is, what's next? You know, now that you've done this, you've done that, and you've traveled the world, and you're running an online business, very successful, what is next for you? And that was a question I ask myself actually all the time. A couple of years ago, I thought, you know what, I want to live the dream. At 24 years old, I told myself, I want to finally retire. Ultimately, that's what people talk about, right? Retire. At 24 years old, I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to retire and live on the beach and travel the world. And I actually did that for about 3 months. And I realized after 3 months, there's just nothing to do. And the reason is, I felt this emptiness inside. Like, is this what I'm going to be doing for the next X amount of years for the rest of my life? And I realized that emptiness stems from this thing that I was missing, which was really fulfillment. I was making very good money online, but there's no real sense of fulfillment. Money was coming in, I was just spending it, and there's no sense of accomplishment at that time. So I realized, you know what would be cooler rather than do this myself was, you know, teaching my friends and family how to do this. And when I started seeing their success and how they were able to quit their jobs and make money online, to me that was very fulfilling. And so in terms of what's next for me, I want to do things that are fulfilling. I think that one of the things, nothing makes my day more happy or fulfilling when someone comes up to me saying, you know, Peng Joon, I just made my first $1,000 online. Or someone saying, you know, I just quit my full-time job because I want to learn from you. Now that makes me very, very fulfilled. So I want to be doing more of that. I want to contribute more. I think at the end of the day, at humans' needs at the highest level is, you know, doing something that matters. And that's what I will be concentrating more moving on in future. Yeah. So moving forward, how do I see the digital age? First of all, is that everything is moving towards digital. Something that people tell me all the time is, you know, but I thought the ship has sailed for internet. That cannot be further away from the truth. Here's the thing, about 4 years ago, Amazon has already reported that their sales of their digital product has exceeded the sales of their physical product. And that gap is only going to become bigger and bigger. So when people say the ship has sailed, that's not true. Sometimes people tell me, but I thought it's overly competitive now, we can't get started. Here's the thing, if you got started the time when I started, that was when it was really hard. Why? Even to build a website, you need to be a programmer, a designer, or if you don't do it, right, you need to hire someone who's a programmer, and at that time, it's about $10,000 to build a website. So if anything at all, the barriers to entry is now extremely low, much easier than how it is 10 years ago. So if anything at all, digital is the future, apps are the future, and you want to be thinking about how you can get yourself involved in the digital age. I think that a person, and that's the thing in this industry I learned a couple of years, that you only get to see the person's true colors, not on stage, but how they are off stage. Yeah. And I owe that a lot to my parents. My parents always told me the same thing while growing up. My mom especially, she always told me that her wishes for me was never to be rich or to be successful. In fact, they've never even said that once to me. They always told me that they would be proud of me as long as I turn out to be a good person. And every day, I always ask myself, if I did this, would my parents be proud of me?